the Albanians and the Serbs might be able to get back together again and negotiate and come up with a solution that ultimately could have satisfied both sides. And again, we have to recognise, the international community gave it a good go. Marty Ahtisaari, who was so instrumental at the time in '99 in persuading the Serbs to withdraw their forces, came back on the scene, as you know, empowered by the UN to come up with the Ahtisaari plan. Negotiations started. A second exercise took place under the EU and Wolfgang Ischinger, involving the Russians, the parties, the United States, the European Union. So again, we gave it a fair crack. But at the end of the day, the two sides were very, very, very far apart. We also have to be frank, there was a certain, even under a democratic Serbia, there was a strong nationalistic streak still that ran through their attitude towards Kosovo. So that is the reason, I think, why now many NATO countries, not all though, but many, have decided that the independence is the only viable way forward. But at the same time, while looking, particularly with regards to the north of Kosovo, the largely Serbian dominated enclave there, what kind of special arrangements can be found which could guarantee those Serbs the sense that they're not sort of stuck in an alien state, that they can have links over the border. We've got European solutions here. I mean, look at Northern Ireland now. The Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland was a big breakthrough because the Catholics suddenly understood that they could live in a Northern Ireland with the Protestants under a power-sharing arrangement while still having, lots and lots of links with the South. With the Irish Republic across the border, and many of them have dual citizenship, for example, which you find elsewhere. Look at the German speakers who live in Belgium, very happily and cross the border to go and work in Germany every day. I mean, within the European Union, you find lots of sort of cross-border sort of activities because integration has made these issues of borders and territory gradually lose their meaning. I'm sure that we'll arrive in the Balkans one day, that kind of situation. But the problem now is not to stagnate in a way which frustrates both sides, that there's no real progress, and could tempt some people at least to sort of go back to the violence. As I said before, even if the ultimate solution is still beyond the horizon, the key thing is to keep the political process going. Of sides talking, of communication, and NATO and the EU. Now that we are sort of assuming the sort of responsibility jointly for the future of Kosovo, we need also to talk to each other so that we steer the process in the most sensible way we can.
You talk about the fact that many efforts were made by the international community to ensure that this process could go forward with as many people being happy with the outcome as possible. It didn't work out. There was the Qaeda, there was Ahtisaari, the succession. At what point did you feel there's only going to be one end to this, and that's independence?
Well, I think the problem, of course, is after 1999, Serbia had no role any longer in Kosovo. Even though 1244 continued to assert Serb sovereignty, it also made clear that it was not Belgrade which would define the future of Kosovo. It would be the UN, the international community. And then, as I said, the contact group agreed that there was no return to direct rule from Belgrade, no return to the status quo ante. So we were always in a situation where we simply couldn't sort of go back to the past. We'd have to come up with something new. And of course, the Kosovars, in the 10 years since they've been sort of living with NATO and living under the UN, but not living under Belgrade, have got used to sort of being masters of their own fate. Power has been progressively transferred to them in terms of the provincial institutions of self-government, and so clearly they, even before independence was declared, they were sort of increasingly psychologically seeing themselves as heading towards independence. And once that psychological momentum is created, where Belgrade has disappeared, if you like, out of their daily lives, at least for the Kosovo Albanians, it becomes very difficult to persuade people that suddenly you're going to sort of stop the clock and go backwards. That's undoubtedly I think the consequences of what we had to live with. But of course the other lesson is that you cannot intervene somewhere and stop violence and then walk away and not deal with the political fallout. We've learnt that lesson in Afghanistan, we learnt that lesson in Bosnia, that he who intervenes also picks up responsibility for the long-term fate of a place. And you can't just be a military force without getting involved also in the politics. So, Colin Powell, when he was the US Secretary of State, used to call this the pottery barn effect. He used to say, if you break it, you pay for it. Well, I'm not saying we broke Kosovo, but we've certainly been paying for it. Yeah.
And looking at today's Kosovo, obviously there's been the Declaration of Independence, the new constitution, flags, anthem. One of the developments that's coming up shortly is the creation of the Kosovo Security Force. Some people have said this is the final break with its past because this creates a security force that has no links with the former Kosovo Liberation Army. Do you feel that this is the key moment when Kosovo stands on its own 2 feet?
Well, no, I think that ultimately, to my mind, the key things are going to be the economic viability of Kosovo, because if you want the Serbs to feel at home in Kosovo and to stay, they have to have the sense that they're not going to be sort of on lifelong unemployment benefit or dependent upon pensions or handouts being paid from Belgrade, which Belgrade can ill afford, by the way, given its own transformation program. They've got to have to feel that Kosovo is the place of opportunity where you can get on, and I generally believe that economic prosperity is a fantastic integrator. The one area in the Balkans, Paul, as you know, where the ethnic communities have always gone on famously has been in organised crime. Where there's a prospect of making money, differences fade very, very quickly. So I believe personally that issues like anti-corruption, governance, ethnic representation in the civil service, the police, for instance, just a sense of, this place is taking off and I want to be part of it is important. I mean, one of the reasons why the Russian-speaking minorities in the Baltic states have been very happy to stay is, of course, they've seen a dynamic economy and, better standard of living than they could have had elsewhere. So, to my mind, that is the key thing. But the security forces are very important because let's face it, there are a lot of weapons in Kosovo. There are a lot of structures. There's the Kosovo Protection Corps, which grew out of the old Kosovo Liberation Army. And Marty Ahtisaari made the point very well that it's better to have these guys above the surface where you can see them doing legitimate things under international supervision than it is underground, with arms caches, secret training in the woods in the middle of the night, with balaclavas and hoods over their heads, ready to sort of,